to our Global Conversation series. Today we are lucky enough to be interviewing Stefanie Batten Bland, who has done so much interesting work on, as she would say, both sides of the pond, and has woven in and out of the scene in and around New York, and whose work is not limited simply to classical ballet dance as we think of it, but is informed by a number of other modalities and art forms, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So Stefanie, welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody. Please tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. I am a kid from SoHo, New York, before SoHo had capital letters. So I grew up in a loft. I grew up in a paper factory. My father was a classical and contemporary and jazz composer. So you've got to wrap your head around that one. And my mother is a science writer. And I'm the youngest of two brothers. And it's a place that was very specific and that was made by a really specific type of people that were interested in creating arts and spaces that could allow people to be together. I left that, lived most of my life in Europe as a performer and accidentally became a maker, and came back here in 2011 with some really beautiful support from the Baryshnikov Arts Center and the Jerome Robbins Foundation, and started looking at what would be my contribution to what SoHo is now. And how to, I guess, remind it that it was a place that at least I grew up in that was meant for everybody and not meant as a place of complete exclusion, and that there's a physical footprint to that place. And so I'm trying to bring that back.
So your art is really related to placemaking in some ways then, your neighborhood and what it was.
Very much is.
To be. Tell us a little bit about the last piece you've created or what you're working on now. And also, do you work on multiple things at the same time, or are you very disciplined, just do one and then another and then another?
Oh, the life of the independent maker. It is a mixed bag of things, isn't it? The last piece that we just made, I'll say the last live piece, was Look Who's Coming to Dinner. This was a live piece, a dance theater piece that was inspired by the famous Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, Sidney Poitier, Katharine Hepburn. And this was a piece that looked at who has the right to come to our dinner tables. Who do we decide to invite in? And this was for the Alliance Française Crossing the Line Festival in October. That closed, and the piece that lives alongside of that is our biggest touring piece, is called Welcome, Bienvenue. It says basically welcome in several different languages. This is also a dance theater piece, but it has an enormous participatory installation component in it, where audience members help us create a wall, one that might be used for separation or might be used as a mural and celebrates everyone that is in the audience with us that evening. Those would be the performing arts pieces, the live pieces, the pieces that we can go and see. At the same time, in the commission realm, right, because we all wear these different types of hats when we're makers. In the commission realm, I'm currently working with American Ballet Theater and underneath their Women's Movement Initiative. This is a 3-year project that, at least a portion that I'm a part of, is an alliance with Duke University. In that context, I'm working in a creative context with dancers, and at the same time in an educational context with an R1 institution of Duke. And in that place, I'm looking at the very large umbrella of what a monument is, and who am I inside of a monument, and what is my place within history making of today. So that's called monuments, with the M-E in the middle capitalized. That's really ongoing. We're in U2 right now. And then in our dance cinema and in our online work, we just finished working with the EU, which is one of our partners that we've worked with prior. And we just finished celebrating Europe Day. And specifically the performance was, and this year's iteration of it was to celebrate all essential workers in New York City, which is the seat of the EU that's at the UN.
Wow. So a lot of ongoing work, despite the fact that so many choreographers and dancers are in lockdown. In talking to some other choreographers, one of the things they've told us is that they are taking some time during this period to really reflect on performing arts in general, on their own work, watching some full-length ballets. But it sounds like you're going pretty much on all cylinders right now, and still making on a number of different fronts.
I'd say the first month of the pandemic was extremely reclusive for me. I wasn't interested in making. I could care less about dance. I could care less about anything other than understanding how to do distance learning and handling a toddler that couldn't touch people or park benches or things, and then an elder daughter who was really trying to comprehend what does sickness mean, and not to find fear in our living. And I'm privileged. I was able to leave New York City. I'm down here on a farm in Virginia on my mother's land, and I was able very recently to start seeing other things, having interest in other things other than making it through to the other side of this just as a human being. I really only have a couple hours a day to be able to do work.
Yeah, so many of my friends who are creative, whether it's in finance, law, in the arts, are finding that it's really challenging trying to homeschool kids and do the counseling around what's going on, and then turning back to a work. Having the time and the energy and the space to create must be challenging, I would imagine.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think what this has shown me, something I think we all know, if one is woman, is or identifies as, is quite simply that this system has never been made for us. As I look at how unemployment is calculated, how there just isn't anything that corresponds to the way in which we make it work, right? So yeah, I think in terms of reflection and what I see coming out is simply that we have to now understand and know that it's normal to be women. It's just normal. And so in order to create a space where we can work normally, i.e. with the same freedoms and perks as men, then we need to be normal. Once that happens, and we're just going to have a completely different way of communicating.
I think that's 100% true. And that is a great segue into my next question, which is talk a little bit, because you just did, for all of us, by the way, who are female, about some of the obstacles that you've had to overcome as a leader and how things may or may not change going forward, pandemic or otherwise.
I do think what is unique about women makers in general is that we tend to be pluridisciplinary in our hearing and in our gathering of information and assembling and letting all of that work circularly within our teams. And as a result of that, I do believe that the work often that women end up making is one where people feel extremely valued. And I know that I am a huge believer of that with Company SBB in our team. And then, I don't go into a space feeling challenged. I've normally been like one of the types in a room for most of my career. So to me, it's more that it's not the question of, okay, now I'm the only woman in this kind of crafted, we're looking at women again, hopefully we'll get this movement right this time kind of space. It's just that, hey, I'm normal. I'm a maker. And indeed, in order for my work to be valued, I need to be valued. In order for me to be valued, we as a gender need to be valued, and so forth and so on and so forth and so on, until, again, I'm just going to harp on that word, until we are just normal and a valuable, functioning part of society.
So talk a little bit, since you are a maker, talk about how you do this. I'm fascinated because of the different dance is a through line, but it's represented in so many different ways in your work. What is your process, and does that vary installation to installation?
I'm genuinely and regularly inspired in the same way, regardless of what type of work it is. And I'll address that in like a commission format, as well as with my own company. And I'm a storyteller, and somehow, whatever the story is, if it's been asked of me in a commission type situation, or if it's something that's just come to me, I see where it happens first. I mean, you were quite right on in terms of pegging that place is very important to me, because place is where I feel we have context and are situated. And once we're inside of that place, then the story can take place. So I think I genuinely see where it is first. And then once I see it, then I start to understand who's inside of it. And then with that casting, who is going to be best able to carry the story forward, right? And then once I see that, then we're ready to all get together, pretty much. I try to just listen as much as possible. Quite often when I try to dictate an outcome, I'm usually really incorrect, and the piece slaps me quite quickly, or a critic does.
Talk a little bit about how you came to work with the American Ballet Theater Women's Movement, of which I am a very proud sponsor. And what have you gotten out of the experience in working with ABT dancers? And then segue a little bit to talk about your specific work for the movement.
Absolutely. I think that this was sort of a happy accident, right? I'm someone that was trained in ballet. I was a Joffrey girl, but it isn't a vernacular that I speak, even though I have a deep love and appreciation for taking class. I was pinged by, you're quite right. I mean, why come to me? There's so many brilliant, specifically ballet vernacular makers out there, that I was kind of flabbergasted. I really didn't understand why someone kind of would come to me for this. And so as we began the conversations, and I said, well, listen, if I have got to be really honest here. I said, if this would make sense to you, this will make sense to me. And here's what I would love to offer this space and this time period right now. It's looking at what are the definitions. I mean, to me, when I first learned about ballet, I remembered it from a place of exclusion, as I think a lot of people of color could and did at a certain time period. And then suddenly I'd say, like, a place like the Joffrey just said, well, what do you got? And they just took a chance. And anyone that decides to just kind of take a chance is someone that offers risk, and risk in space is an exciting and energetic way of being. So I said that I would like to offer that risk back to the genre, and thinking about how exciting and radical classical vernacular was when it came through Italy. And I'm just imagining this young Catherine, when she first came into the court system seeking through this forced marriage, how could she find freedom? And it was through these court dances, and through her quiet, and through the whispering that could go on when the royalty was in the same space moving around together. That's where women's power was being distributed, through the whispering. And I said, well, listen to me, that this is a monumental moment. And I think it came out in this kind of conversation that if I could, I would love to look at who is the me inside of the monumental, and who is that person that we're asking someone to come pay and see. My offering was accepted, and we'll be taking this to the Nasher Museum, which is housed in Durham in the Duke area. And we'll have a performance installation. So there will be aspects of this that will be on display with non-ballet dancers in the daytime, and then it will infuse with the ballerinas at a certain time. And then this formula is now in discussion at the Met for when it comes up north. So I'm also trying to make a connection between ABT and Duke, and make a north-south conversation occur as well.
Interesting. All right, we got to do this one quick. We got almost exactly 5 minutes. So lightning round here. Ready? There we go. Favorite dance memory?
My first bow at Palais de Pape.
Nice. Sweet or savory?
Savory.
Okay. Broadway, West End, or something else we haven't thought of?
Yeah, Sleep No More Inside.
Dream travel destination post-lockdown. This can be with or without the kids.
Thailand.
Guilty pleasure.
Not talking to anybody.
I'm sorry. Oh no.
No, no.
We can hang up now. Palais Garnier, Royal Opera House, or Metropolitan Opera House?
We were Opéra Comique, right? So there's Garnier, Bastille, and Comique. So I'm the Comique house, but we performed at Garnier. So I'd have to say the opera houses.
There we go. Fair enough. Are you dancing indoors or outdoors?
Depends.
Okay. Adagio or Grand Allegro?
Adage.
Okay. Favorite city?
New York.
Of course. And Soho, right?
Of course.
Jumping or floor work?
Floor work.
Beach or mountain?
Beach.
You beach girl? Okay. Graham or Cunningham? And next one of these, you'll explain Cunningham to me if you say Cunningham.
I'd say Graham because he comes from her.
Ah, interesting. Barefoot, ballet slippers, or point shoes? And Claudia Schreier, by the way, said heels. I was like, that's not fair.
Yeah, well, I would have to say socks.
Okay, there we go. Rehearsal or performance?
Oh, rehearsal.
Dance icon, and then if you've got another one, a personal icon?
I'd say personal icon. There are two. It's Don Bondi and Karan Brown, and they were my two founding teachers. And then Pam Tanowitz, because I think the way that she speaks and the way that she creates are just very truthful, and I have great respect for her.
Talk to me a little bit about how you think it might work to change the culture. I know you're not you know ballet, but you're not a ballet only gal. Talk a little bit about what we, with our limited budget but persistence, can get done.
I mean, I think about your organization, and to me, I think what is important and what is thrilling about it is that it's one that obliges conversation. And the minute we say more about something, the more normal it is, right? When we're hearing about something more and more, then we're just suddenly not surprised by it anymore.
Thank you so much, Stefanie Batten Bland.
Thanks so much.